Welcome back to Pink Slip Pavilion. We are back in the pavilion with another layoff story. And if this is your first time here, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button so you never miss a story. We're here every Wednesday proving that your pink slip is just a power move waiting to happen. And this week we have Melissa Cohen sharing her story from building brands to building her own.
This pink slips the start, not the end.
Welcome to Pink Slip Pavilion, Melissa. So excited to have you here in the pavilion with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we have to start with the most important question. Have you ever gotten a pink slip?
I have indeed been laid off in my career. And I actually think it's really important for people to know that almost every person that I know, once they've reached a certain amount of years in the workforce, has been laid off. I think we really have to normalize that conversation. And so I love what you're doing with this podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here and to hear your story. And thank you for saying that because I agree. I think we need to normalize this conversation. This should not be a shame moment. This should be a reframe moment. And no, I did not practice that for anyone listening to this.
That's great, though.
So let's set the stage. When you got your pink slip, kind of what was going on at work? What was going on in life? Where were you in your career?
Yeah, so it was in 2020. Isn't that a great year that we all want to remember forever because it was so fantastic.
Yeah.
It was in 2020. I was working at my dream company. I had been there for a number of years, and honestly, I just kind of figured that that was where I was going to retire. I'd worked in the industry that I worked in. I worked in the fashion industry. I'd worked there for many years. But then 2020 did come along. The pandemic came along. I live in New York City. New York City was a very interesting place to be during the pandemic.
I bet.
Yeah, so that's kind of setting the stage for you.
Okay. And where was your mind when all this was going on? And that's a big question because there was a global pandemic going on, but obviously you didn't see this coming. So where was your mindset when you did get that pink slip?
I mean, I think everybody's initial reaction is, well, I shouldn't say that. I think everybody does handle it differently to some degree. I've heard people say, and I've read that losing a job is almost like a death.
Hmm.
And I think that that's very true, right? You lose a big piece of yourself. You lose a big piece of your identity. You lose a big piece of your routine. You start worrying about, what am I going to do next? How am I going to find another job? It's a very scary feeling when it first happens because you also can't help but feel that little sense of shame, like you were talking about, right? Like, why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? And, I think it's really important for people to know, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later when we talk more about mindset shift and all of that, but a lot of times it has nothing to do with you, right? A lot of times it is a financial decision. It is what's going on with the company right now kind of decision. It's not always personal, right? It's oftentimes just business.
Most of the time, I would say it's business if we really looked at the data. But for you, I mean, you thought that it was your dream career and that's where you were ultimately going to stay. So what was your mindset like going through a layoff in a dream role and a place where you really saw yourself kind of living out your career?
Yeah, it's very shocking at first, very eye-opening at first. You kind of go through all the emotions, right? You kind of go through sadness, you go through a little bit of anger and frustration, you go through a little bit of denial. You kind of feel everything, right? And then you just kind of come to a place of, okay, this is where it is, this is what's happened. And you have to start thinking about what you're going to do next and what your next steps are going to be.
So that kind of paints perfectly a little bit of the evolution of the mind. But how, I know I'm sure people are going to listen to this and think, that's great, but how do I get there? So how did your mindset go from kind of all the emotions and all the things that come with it to, I would say maybe acceptance and then starting to look forward versus kind of living? Because I think people get stuck sometimes in
Sure.
all the emotions. How did you move through that?
My situation is probably slightly different from what many people will experience just because of the year that it happened, right? There was so much uncertainty and so much sadness, unease, fear, panic kind of just in the world in 2020. And so part of my mind was honestly distracted just by all of that, right? Everything that was going on in the world. My daughter at the time was a high school freshman and trying to navigate remote learning, trying to navigate having all three of us, you know, she, my husband, and I be in our New York City apartment 24/7, right? Everybody working from home, not working from home, learning at home. Um, but it also made it a little bit harder because it wasn't the typical situation where I could just go and start looking for another job right away, right? Because I worked in the fashion industry. The fashion industry in particular was hit very hard by COVID, right? Nobody was buying clothes. Nobody was going anywhere. You had no reason to buy a new outfit, right? Maybe you were buying black yoga pants, right? That's it. Um, so it was a really interesting time to navigate. And in a way, maybe it was good because I didn't have that pressure of starting to look for a new job right away. I mean, in a way, it added to the pressure because it was like, oh my goodness, there's no jobs to even look for. But it also took some of that pressure off because there were no jobs to look for.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And I know a lot of people listening may have gone through their layoff in 2020, but may still be recovering from that because depending on what industry you were in and how your industry bounced back or didn't, because that was a big part of 2020's impact on the world too. I think it's really interesting to think about the idea of taking off pressure at a time when there was so much chaos going on. It did give you a little bit more space to go, okay, what do I maybe want next? Because there's no jobs to apply to in the world. We're not really sure what's happening in it and when we'll be outside again and when we might leave our yoga pants, which some of us never did.
I still love a good black yoga pant. Yes.
Same, same. So, with that, I'm super curious, what blessings would you have missed out on potentially? Like where your life is now, had this never happened and you had stayed on that track at that company, what blessings would you have missed out on had this pink
Oh
slip?
my God. How long do you have? It's a long list.
I love it.
So I never viewed myself as entrepreneurial. I never wanted to have my own business. I was corporate through and through. That's all I had ever known and all I had ever done. But obviously, the job market started to open up at a certain point, right? Jobs started to slowly become available. And I had a really, really difficult time. I had some absolutely horrible experiences with interviewing and multiple rounds of interviewing and ghosting, just really terrible behavior. And I finally decided I didn't want to put myself through that anymore. I think the culmination, the one that really decided it for me, I don't know, it's been a long time, but six, 7 rounds of interviews, interviewed with everybody in the organization they could have possibly wanted me to interview with. And the final piece of feedback I got from their in-house head of HR was that I was their top candidate and they would be in touch on Monday to discuss next steps. And I have never heard from them again. Yeah, it was really eye-opening to me, and I just decided I didn't want to put myself through that process anymore. It was sort of a final straw situation, right? Had a few instances like that. And so first thing I did is I started consulting. I opened my own business, consulting, still in the fashion space because that's really what I knew how to do. But there's another big blessing that came my way with, and I know this is going to sound really funny, but I fell in love with LinkedIn because of course one of the first things that I decided to do was to go to LinkedIn to see if it could help me find a job, right? I had always gotten a job through my network. I never used recruiters or headhunters. And I realized my whole network was going through what I was going through as well, right? Either they had also been recently laid off, or they had just laid off a big portion of their team, or they were terrified that they were going to be next on a list. And so I said, okay, I joined LinkedIn a really long time ago. Never did anything on the platform. I never posted. I was very inactive. and I couldn't believe what I found there. It was completely different than what I remembered. I think it was really just that sort of perfect storm of people being stuck at home and wanting a social outlet in a professional setting. And I really started to build a community there and build relationships and having conversations. And people saw what I did there and how I grew my following and had a lot of interaction with people. And they started asking me to help them. And that was wild to me. Help you with LinkedIn. That's crazy. But sure, let me help you with LinkedIn. No problem. And that just eventually became a huge part of what I do today, right? Which is helping people to leverage LinkedIn, helping people to understand the power of a personal brand, right? Because it's very, no pun intended, it's very personal for me. Because when I lost my job, it really made me realize how much of my own self-worth was tied up in who I worked for and what my title was. And that's something I never wanted to feel again. And I don't want other people to ever feel. So it's a huge blessing. And I say very sincerely that all of the things that have happened to me, the really positive things that have happened to me in the last 6 years, have all happened because corporate left me and I started to be an entrepreneur. So I speak, I've co authored 2 books, I run my own business, and none of these things would have ever happened if I was still in corporate.
Huge. And I think it's so important right now in particular because we're seeing this big shift in the job market of it's harder and harder to cut through the AI noise and even get your resume seen. And so
Yeah.
having a personal brand and showing up on platforms where you can actually network, I really think that people need to be leaning hard into the networking in general, whether it's in person, whether it's LinkedIn, having a personal brand, putting value out there. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, that's okay.
No,
But knowing
totally.
that
Yes.
it's available to you, I think we're really seeing giant shifts in the market in a lot of big ways. And I love that you took back your power and said, you know what, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to go through this again. What can I do so that I don't? I also love, because I'm an entrepreneur too, I love that you listen to the market. So you went to market with one product, you're like, this is what I do, and then you let the market say, this is what I see value in from you. Are you willing to help me? And I think that's such a big takeaway for anyone who is considering entrepreneurship or maybe is doing that. That's such a big takeaway. So much gold here for anybody listening, but particularly that you took back your power and you wrote the next chapter of your story, and the blessings came out of you taking the pen. And I think that that's
Yeah.
such a beautiful, I don't know what it is about the metaphors today.
I don't know, but I love that one. That was amazing. I want to write that down.
Well, luckily it's recorded. So if you could go back, obviously there's so much incredibleness that has come out of this for you. And yes, I believe that's a word. If you could
It
go
is
back,
now.
it is now. If you could go back in time and you could speak to yourself as you're getting that pink slip in 2020, life is chaotic, and you could give her advice from the wise position you're in now, what would you want to tell her as she's going through that?
So it's funny. An exercise once as part of a women's leadership organization, and it was, if you were to write your memoir today, what would the title be?
Mm.
And the title that I picked was "It All Worked Out in the End."
Mm.
And that is what I would want my 6 year ago self to know, right? It's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out okay. Trust in yourself. And I'm not a particularly woo woo type of person, but I do believe that the universe has a plan for us. And I do believe that we have to just trust that if we put in the effort and we have good intentions, good things are going to happen.
I love that, particularly that if we put in the effort part, because I think often we sit back and we think about the things that we want in our life, but if we aren't willing to show up and ask for those things or take action towards them, we can't expect the universe or whatever you believe in to reciprocate that energy, right? So I love that. So wrapping up here, if there's someone that's listening to this conversation and they're like walking through a layoff right now, or they're afraid that their name is next, or maybe even they went through their layoff years ago, but they're still harboring some of the emotion or the shame or anything that comes with it, what do you want them to leave this conversation with?
Oh my gosh, a couple of things. One, you're not alone, right? I said it at the beginning of our conversation, but it's true. I mean, I don't have the statistics, but pretty much everyone at some point in their career is going to experience a layoff. It's just the way the world works today, right? Back in my parents' or my grandparents' day, you were with a company for 40 years, you retired with a gold watch and a party and maybe a pension if you were really lucky. Those days are long gone, right? Companies don't have that loyalty to employees anymore, and employees don't have that loyalty to companies anymore either, right? It's a two-way street. So you're not alone. There's no shame in being part of a layoff. It sincerely happens to pretty much everyone at some point. Use it as a springboard, right? I know that sounds crazy. It's probably the last thing on your mind if you're going through it right now, but everything that happens is an opportunity for something better. I was not a young woman when this happened to me. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I was not 30 when I got laid off, right? It is never too late to reinvent yourself. It is never too late to start something new. And what looks like something really, unpleasant, and it is, a layoff is not a pleasant experience. It really can turn out to be a blessing if you try to put a positive, I don't want to use the word spin, but a positive lens on it, right? What can I take from this experience? And what can I use this experience to push me towards, right? If you ever would have told me 6 years ago that this is what my life would be, I would have said you were completely wrong, right? You have no idea what you're talking about. And I would honestly say that the layoff was a blessing. I am doing amazing things. I've met incredible people. I get to travel. I get to speak. I get to know that the work that I do really matters. I've had people tell me that, they've read the book that I co-authored last year, how much it's changed their life, how much it's changed the way they look at things. I never had that in the corporate world, right? So I'd say those are the two biggest things I would want people to know.
Huge. And I hope that people are like really listening to that and going, how can I put a positive spin on this? And not toxic positive, but just,
No,
there's always something that you can find. What can I learn? How can I grow? Where do I want to be next? You can always find something to be positive about or some sort of opportunity if you look for it. And that lens is so powerful and our minds are so powerful. So incredible advice, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being willing to be vulnerable and share your story so that other people know that they aren't alone. And there are great things on the horizon for them too if they're willing to work through it, grow through it, and trust that they put in the effort, good things are coming.
yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully we'll see you again in the pavilion soon. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you take anything from this conversation, let it be that you can reframe your layoff experience at any point. You have that power to look for the opportunity, to look for the places to grow, and to choose to take your power back in your layoff experience. Layoffs are normal. Most people you know and most people that you will meet have experienced a layoff or will at some point in their career. Let the shame go and move forward into the next chapter because there are incredible blessings waiting for you. If you want to connect with Melissa, her contact information will be in the description of this episode. And we'll be back next Wednesday with another story because I'll say it again. We're on a mission to prove that your pink slip is just a power move in disguise. And I'm here to prove it to you every week with stories. I'll see you next week. Make sure you hit that subscribe if you haven't already.
This pink slip